The sharp beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the sterile room, drowning out everything else. I could barely move, barely breathe, but somehow I was still aware, more aware than I wanted to be. The machines around me hummed and beeped, tethering me to this fragile existence. My body was no longer mine to control, but my mind, sharp and unyielding, still held on. And there he was. Before we move on, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment where you're listening from. My son, standing next to my bed, eyes fixed on me with a coldness I'd never seen before. He had always been my pride, my legacy. I'd poured my life into raising him, shaping him to inherit everything I had worked so hard to build. But now, in the sterile silence of the ICU, I could see it clearly. His betrayal was as sharp as any knife. His lips moved, barely a whisper, but I heard him clearly. "Just die," he said, his voice flat. "Then I'll get the business. Everything will be mine." The words cut through the haze of my semi-consciousness, freezing me in place. Was this what it had come to? After all these years of love, sacrifice, and expectation, this was the way he saw me, as nothing more than an obstacle to his own ambition. He wanted me gone. He had already planned his future without me, and he wasn't even hiding it. I should have been angry, should have been raging against this cruel twist of fate, but all I felt was a profound sadness. This man, my own flesh and blood, was ready to let me die, just for the sake of a business he thought was his for the taking. I wanted to shout, I wanted to reach out and grab him by the arm. Demand answers, demand justice. But my body, weak and frail, betrayed me. I could barely move my fingers, let alone fight back. But I wasn't gone, not yet. I lay there pretending to sleep, letting him think I hadn't heard, letting him believe his plan was foolproof, letting him think that in his impatience he could hurry up the inevitable. The ticking clock above my bed seemed to mock me, the seconds slipping by as if everything were out of my control. But there was something he didn't know. I was still here, and when I recovered, I wouldn't let this betrayal slide. No, this would not go unpunished. I may have been confined to this bed, but my mind was still free. I could still think, I could still plan, and I would make him pay. I just had to survive first. I don't know how long I've been out. The haze that clouds my thoughts makes it hard to tell if it's days or weeks. All I know is one moment I'm drowning in the darkness, and the next, the sharp sting of cold air fills my lungs, and I'm back in this world. The first thing I hear is the soft murmur of voices, distant at first, as if they're floating just beyond my reach. My body is heavy, uncooperative, but my mind is awake, sharper than ever. I try to open my eyes, but the effort feels like lifting mountains. Still, I force them open, and the world around me comes into focus. Dim lights, the sterile smell of the hospital, the faint sound of beeping machines. And there, standing just beside the bed, is my son. I should have felt relief, shouldn't I? But instead, something was off. A stillness in the air, like a storm waiting to break. I hear him talking, though. His voice is low, as if he doesn't want me to overhear. But I do. I always do. "Once he's gone," he says, the words carefully measured, "the business will be mine. The house, the legacy, all of it, everything I've been waiting for." His voice falters only briefly, then steadies. "I'll make sure no one challenges me. It'll be smooth." My chest tightens, a quiet wave of anger rising within me, but I don't react. I can't. Not yet. The doctors are speaking now, but I barely register their words, the conversations around me sounding distant and muffled. All that matters is the weight of what my son just said, the truth I had been unwilling to see. It stings worse than any wound I've ever suffered. I try to move, to sit up, but my body betrays me, a slow, sluggish mess of bones and flesh that no longer moves like it once did. But my mind is alert, and it's calculating. I hear more snippets of conversation, but it's all the same. The house, the business, the inheritance. I've worked my entire life for this, and now my son, the one I thought I could trust, the one I thought would carry my legacy forward, is already planning to steal it from me. My flesh and blood. But even as the weight of that betrayal threatens to crush me, there's something else. A quiet fire that begins to burn inside me. I don't let them see. I don't let anyone see. I lie there pretending to be a broken man, my eyes closed as if the world is still a dream. The doctors come and go. The nurses shuffle in and out. My son, my betrayer, remains by my side. But he doesn't know. He doesn't know that I've heard every word, that I see his true nature now. No, I'm not done yet. I'm not broken. I'm still here, and I'm playing the long game now. I will make sure that this betrayal doesn't go unpunished. The first step is surviving. The second is reclaiming everything I've built. And I'll do it quietly. No drama, no yelling, just calm, precise action. I will regain control, and when the time comes, I will show him what true justice looks like. For now, I remain silent. But deep inside, there's a shift, a resolve. It's the beginning of something, the beginning of the end for him. And it's just the beginning for me. As the days passed, I felt the strength returning to my body, little by little. It was slow, painfully slow, but with each passing hour I could feel the fog lifting, my muscles gradually gaining back some of their old strength. The first time I managed to sit up in bed, the movement felt like a small victory. But no matter how much I regained physically, there was still a battle brewing in the quiet corners of my mind. And then my son's behavior began to shift. At first it was subtle, little things that seemed like genuine gestures of care. He'd sit with me longer, not just to check on me but to talk, offering comforting words about my health, about how much he missed our old times together. "You've always been so strong, Dad," he'd say, his voice thick with what seemed like sincerity. "I don't know what I'd do without you." It felt wrong. Too wrong. He started bringing gifts. First a new pair of slippers, then a few of my favorite books. His hands, which had once been the same hands that would dismiss my counsel without a second thought, now gently placed those gifts on my lap, as if nothing had ever happened between us. "I thought you might like these," he'd say with a soft smile, the kind I hadn't seen from him in years. It should have been comforting, I suppose. But to me, it was nothing but a charade. I saw it clearly now, like a mask slipping from his face. His remorse was as shallow as a puddle. Nothing more than an act. He wasn't here out of genuine concern. No, he was here because I was alive, and my survival had interrupted his plans. The business, the inheritance, all of it was still out of his grasp. This new care he was showing was just a way to lull me back into submission. He thought I was too weak, too naive to see through it. But I wasn't. Not anymore. I played along, of course. What else could I do? The more he showered me with false affection, the more I smiled, nodded, and feigned gratitude. I wanted him to think he had won, to think that he was successfully rewiring my perception of him. "He brought me a new pair of glasses, so you can see better," he said with that same false sweet smile. I thanked him. I thanked him for all of it. But inside, the wheels were turning. I knew exactly what he was doing, and every move he made brought me one step closer to my own victory. As the days wore on, I started noticing the way his arrogance began to slip through. He'd leave subtle hints about his new plans. "Once you're feeling better, Dad, I think it's time we talk about the future," he'd say, his eyes twinkling with that familiar, eager ambition. He even mentioned making some big decisions about the business, decisions he seemed to think were his to make. I could almost see the gleam in his eyes, the way he believed he was now the man in charge. The irony of it all hit me like a quiet wave. He had no idea that while he thought he was gaining my trust back, he was actually giving me everything I needed. Every false gesture, every pretense of caring, every word laced with shallow remorse, all of it was building his downfall. He was too sure of his success, too confident in his manipulation. I, on the other hand, was watching, waiting. I'd been in this position before, where patience was the only true weapon. He had underestimated me, and that was his greatest mistake. He thought his little gifts and empty words could erase the years of betrayal. But what he didn't know was that every one of those gifts only tightened the rope around his neck. Every moment he spent feeding me his lies, every show of fake affection, was another piece of the puzzle, another part of the game I was playing. The more he tried to ingratiate himself, the clearer it became. He was making all the wrong moves. His arrogance would be his undoing, and I was the one who would be there when it all fell apart. Slowly, quietly, and with every calculated gesture, I was setting the stage for his reckoning. He thought he had me fooled. But the truth was, the more he fawned over me, the more I could see what he truly wanted: control. And that was the one thing I'd never give him. The tension had been building for days, the air between us thick with unsaid words and unspoken intentions. My son had played his game well, pretending to care, pretending to be the devoted son he thought I needed. But the time for pretending was running out. His mask was slipping, and I could see the cracks beginning to show. It started innocently enough, or at least that's how he made it seem. He had become more insistent lately, more eager to help. I should have known it was coming. The signs were all there. The subtle comments about the business, the constant references to what would happen when I'm no longer around. But it wasn't until that day when he walked into the room with those papers in his hand that I knew the time for games was over. "Dad," he said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth, "I think it's time we made things official, with your health. Well, we both know you can't keep running things like you used to." He paused, waiting for me to say something, but I remained silent, watching him, calculating his next move. He placed the papers on the bedside table, pushing them closer to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Just sign here. It's nothing complicated. A simple transfer of authority. You know how it works. I looked at the papers. It wasn't just any transfer. It was a complete handover of everything I had built. The business, the house, the legacy, my entire life's work. Just sign, he repeated, his voice firm now, as if the decision had already been made for me. You don't have much time left, Dad. It's for the best. Something in his tone, it was the way he said for the best, made my blood run cold. The arrogance, the entitlement. He honestly believed that because I was weak, he had the right to everything that belonged to me, that my life's work was a mere stepping stone to his. I could feel the anger rising within me, but I forced it down. Now wasn't the time to lash out. I was still recovering, still playing the part of the frail old man. But I wouldn't be a fool. Not again. I pushed the papers away, slowly, deliberately. His eyes flickered with surprise. Then irritation. What's the problem, Dad? You don't want to do this. It's what's best for you. For both of us. You don't get it, do you? I said quietly. My voice steady though my heart was pounding. This business, this life, it's not something you just take. You don't get to waltz in here and expect me to hand everything over just because you think I'm finished. His eyes darkened, and for the first time in weeks I saw the mask slip completely. The sweet words, the false care, it was all gone. He wasn't playing anymore. This was real. And I could see it now, the raw greed, the desperation. You don't have a choice, old man, he spat, his voice low, venomous. You're dying. Your time is up. I've been patient, but you're running out of time. I don't have time to wait for you to die slowly. It's mine, and you know it. The words hit me like a slap, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I met his eyes, my gaze unwavering. I was weak, yes. My body wasn't what it once was. But my mind was sharp, and my resolve was stronger than it had ever been. I'm not signing anything, I said firmly, my voice carrying more weight than it ever had before. Not for you, not for anyone. He leaned in closer, his face twisted in anger, but I didn't back down. I didn't need to. You'll regret this, he threatened. His fists clenched at his sides. I couldn't help but smile, just slightly. You're already starting to. For the first time in a long time, I felt the power shift. His arrogance, his desperation, it was his undoing. He thought I was too weak to fight back, too frail to stand my ground, but he was wrong. I had been patient, I had been watching, and now the game had changed. He turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him, but I didn't care. I knew something he didn't. This was only the beginning. His desperation would only grow, and with it his mistakes. And I'd be here waiting, calculating, watching him fall. This was just the first confrontation. The real game was about to begin. The silence in my room had become almost comforting, a reminder that I was still alive, still in control of my mind, even if my body betrayed me at every turn. Every day I grew a little stronger, a little more capable of playing the long game. My son, on the other hand, grew more reckless, more consumed by the urgency to take what he believed was his. But I wasn't going to let him have it. At least not without a price. I spent my days watching him, studying his every move. He didn't suspect a thing. He still thought he was the one pulling the strings, that he could manipulate me into signing away everything I had built, all with a few well-placed words and false affections. But I knew better. The more he played his hand, the more he revealed his true nature, his hunger for power, and his utter disregard for anything resembling family or loyalty. I began to realize something. His greed was his greatest weakness, and I would use it against him. It started small, subtle things at first. I started leaving things around my room, small documents, old papers I'd once glanced over, and making sure he saw them. I didn't say a word, didn't acknowledge him when he came into the room, but I could see the way his eyes lingered on those papers, the way his mind began to work. He wasn't as careful as he thought he was. It was almost too easy to plant seeds of doubt in his mind. I knew he was getting anxious. The more I lay in bed, pretending to be weak, the more he assumed I was too frail to notice anything, too frail to fight back. One day I overheard him on the phone, speaking to someone in low tones, trying to arrange a final meeting to get everything signed. It was clear he thought he had me cornered, but what he didn't know was that I was already setting things in motion. I had reached out to my lawyer, the same one who'd been with me through the years. We hadn't spoken in months, but he understood my mind, my intentions, and more importantly, he knew how to cover my tracks. I gave him no details, no clear instructions. I simply told him to prepare, to make sure the right documents were in place for when the time came, and then I waited, while my son focused on making his moves, rushing to secure what he thought was his. I was watching, waiting, and letting him dig himself deeper into the hole. He began to act even more impulsively, spending money we didn't need, trying to show everyone how capable he was of handling the business. He was so eager to take control that he started ignoring the small details, the things that once kept everything in balance. His arrogance blinded him to the cracks forming under his feet, and those cracks were widening. One evening, he came into my room, a folder of documents in his hand, eager to make the final push. "Dad," he said, smiling that smile, the one I used to trust. "Let's get this over with. You know what's best for everyone." He laid the documents on the table beside my bed. His voice was calm, but I could hear the desperation underneath. He was so close, and he could feel it. The air felt thick with his anticipation. He thought I was weak, that I wouldn't refuse him again. I didn't say a word, I just watched him, letting the silence stretch between us. "You're ready, aren't you?" he asked, his eyes scanning my face for any sign of hesitation. "You know it's for the best." I knew exactly what he was trying to do, push me into agreeing with him, to wear me down with his false confidence, but I wasn't ready to play my hand yet. I let him talk, let him think he was convincing me. I let him believe he had won, that everything was falling into place. But inside I was far from finished. The truth was, he had already set himself up for failure, and I was about to make sure it all fell apart. He left that night, frustrated that I hadn't signed anything, but confident that the next time he came back, I'd be too weak to resist. But I knew he was too blinded by his own arrogance to see the trap I was setting for him. I continued to play my part, pretending to weaken further, acting as though I was losing my grip on reality. But I wasn't. Every move he made played into my hands. Every step he took toward his victory was another step toward his ruin. The more he tried to force my hand, the more I saw his desperation. He had started making deals behind my back, promising things he couldn't deliver. He didn't know it, but he was already committing the very acts that would lead to his downfall. The ticking clock was becoming louder now. The deadline was approaching. The more he pushed, the more I prepared for the moment when I would pull the rug out from under him. And he still didn't know what was coming. I was in control. The slow burn of revenge had started, and I was the one who would decide when it ended. Every day I could see my son growing more certain that his victory was near. His movements became more confident, more brazen, as if the business, the house, everything I'd built was already his for the taking. He walked with a new swagger, an air of triumph that made my blood run cold. He didn't know it yet, but the victory he so eagerly believed in was nothing more than a delusion. I played the part of the helpless father well. My body weakened further, just enough to make him believe that I was on my last legs, ready to hand over everything I'd worked for. But the truth was I was far from finished. Each day that passed was another day I gained the strength to make my move. And as he grew more arrogant, I knew he was digging his own grave deeper. He began to make decisions without consulting anyone, as though the business was already his domain. He started taking liberties with the assets, making promises to suppliers, clients, and even family members, all in an attempt to solidify his control. But what he didn't know was that his actions were becoming more alienating. The people who had once trusted him began to notice his greed, his disregard for the legacy I had built. One day I overheard a conversation between two of my old colleagues, people I had known for years. They were speaking about him, about how he had been making deals behind my back and telling people I was no longer in a position to make decisions. The truth was, his arrogance was starting to turn people away, and he didn't even realize it. "You know, I thought highly of him once," one of them said, "but he's turning into something else. I think he's more interested in the money than the people who helped him get where he is." I knew it wouldn't take long for people to see him for what he truly was, a man who saw my legacy as nothing more than a prize to claim, a trophy to display. The irony was delicious. He had spent so much time playing the role of the dutiful son, pretending to care, that now, when it mattered most, his true nature had been revealed. And all the while he thought he was winning. I had started to leave small things around, small details in conversations, documents that looked important but weren't, to plant just the right seeds in his mind. Every time he came to me, eager to prove he was in charge, I played the role of the frail, weary father. I let him believe he was running the show. I let him think he had me fooled. In truth, I was fooling him. Every move he made, every decision he took without consulting anyone, was leading to his undoing. The more desperate he became, the more aggressive he grew in his tactics. But his arrogance blinded him to the fact that he was cutting the very strings that held his world together. As the weeks passed, I began to see his relationships with others fray. Family members, once eager to support him, began to distance themselves. They could see the changes in him, the hunger, the greed, the subtle cruelty. His allies began to look away, questioning his judgment, questioning his motivations. He was so consumed with the idea of winning that he couldn't see how quickly he was losing everything he had. I could see the cracks in his plan now, the small flaws that would soon cause the whole thing to crumble. He had overplayed his hand, becoming too confident, too sure of his position. People were starting to talk. The weight of his arrogance was bearing down on him, and he didn't even know it. Meanwhile, I remained silent. I let him make all the moves. I let him believe he was in control. The more he pushed, the more I bided my time. It was hard to keep up the act, but every minute that passed brought me closer to the moment when I could strike. It was almost time. I could feel the anticipation building within me, knowing that the end of this game was near. But for now I played my role, helpless, frail, deceived. I allowed him to think he was on the brink of victory, his future secure, his grip tightening around everything that had once been mine. The tension was building now, at a steady pace. My son was blind to the fact that he had already lost. And I, quiet, patient, was waiting for the right moment to take back everything that was mine. It was the slow burn of revenge, and with every passing day the heat was rising. It was the moment he had been waiting for, the one he had thought would define his victory. My son walked into the room that day, a man consumed by arrogance, believing that the inheritance, everything I had spent a lifetime building, was now his to take. He had made all the moves, played his part, manipulated the situation to his advantage, convinced that I was too weak to fight back. But what he didn't realize was that every step he had taken had only led him into the trap I had so carefully laid. I had been watching him, waiting for the right moment. And now the time had come. He stood before me, the papers in his hand, a confident smirk playing at the corners of his lips. "Dad, it's time," he said, his voice dripping with false affection. "You know I've done everything I can. It's time to sign the final documents. We can finally move forward. I'll take care of everything from here." I didn't say anything at first. I didn't need to. My silence was enough to make him pause, just for a moment. But that moment was all I needed. I could see it in his eyes, the certainty that he had won, the belief that I had finally given in. His victory was already in his mind. It was only a matter of paperwork. He handed me the documents, ready for me to sign, but I didn't reach for them. Instead, I just watched him. His eyes narrowed, impatience beginning to seep through his calm demeanor. "Why the delay, Dad?" he asked. His tone no longer sweet, now laced with irritation. "It's done. Just sign, and everything will be yours. You know it's the best thing." I looked at him, my gaze steady. "You really think it's that simple?" I asked, my voice calm, almost detached. "You think I'm just going to hand over everything to you because you've worn me down with your lies?" He blinked, taken aback by the question. His facade cracked, just a little. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. "I'm your son. This is all for you. I'm doing what's best." "No," I said quietly. "You're doing what's best for you." He shook his head, clearly frustrated. "This is ridiculous, Dad. I don't know why you're dragging this out. I've been patient with you, but we both know you're not in any condition to run things anymore. Just sign." I remained silent. He couldn't see it yet, but the game was already over. With a slow, deliberate motion, I reached for the documents, the ones he believed would seal his victory. I flipped them over and revealed a set of papers underneath. He didn't even notice at first, but when he did, his expression faltered. "What's this?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. "That's not the will we discussed." I could see the panic starting to build in his eyes. "It's the real one," I said, my voice low, yet firm. "The one I've been keeping safe, the one you've been so eager to ignore. You see, those documents you've been so confident about, they're fake, forged, just like all your promises and manipulations." His face turned pale as the realization hit him. "No," he whispered, taking a step back. You can't do this." I nodded, watching his reaction with quiet satisfaction. The documents in his hands were meaningless now. They were nothing but a tool of his own undoing. He had been so sure, so blinded by his own greed, that he never once questioned whether he was getting what he thought he was. "You thought you could take everything from me," I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word. "You thought you could play me, use me, control everything I built, but you didn't account for one thing, my own resolve." He tried to speak, but his words were jumbled, his anger rising, disbelief clouding his judgment. His world, built on lies and ambition, was crumbling before him. But, I was your son, he stammered. You were supposed to leave everything to me. I stood up slowly, meeting his frantic gaze. You had the chance, but you threw it all away. Your greed, your arrogance, your impatience, they led to your downfall. You wanted my legacy, but you failed to earn it. This was never yours to take. The truth hit him like a freight train. He had believed he was in control, that he was playing me, but I had been playing him all along. The inheritance wasn't his. It was going to charity, just as I had planned all along. His face twisted in a mask of rage and desperation. You can't do this, he shouted, his hands trembling as he dropped the fake documents onto the floor. I'm your son. You owe me this. No, I said, my voice calm but final. I owe you nothing. He collapsed into the nearest chair, his shoulders slumping as the weight of his defeat settled over him. He had no words left, no excuses, no last-minute pleas. His world had come crashing down, and he had no one to blame but himself. I stood there, watching him, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about the business, or the money, it was about justice. His betrayal, his manipulation, and his greed had led him to this moment, where everything he had worked for had slipped through his fingers. I turned and walked toward the door, leaving him behind in the ruins of his own making. The final confrontation had come, and with it, the justice I had been waiting for. I had reclaimed my legacy, not through anger, but through careful planning and patience. And as I stepped into the next chapter of my life, I knew one thing for certain: I had won. The days after the final confrontation passed quietly, but the weight of what had transpired settled in slowly. The dust had settled, the smoke cleared, and my son, once so sure of his victory, was left with nothing. His plans had crumbled under the weight of his own greed, and all the power he thought he had gained evaporated in an instant. The house was no longer his to command, the business no longer his to control. He was left with the shattered remnants of the empire he thought would be his. I didn't need to gloat, I didn't need to say anything more. His defeat was as complete as it was final. It was the justice he had earned. I walked through the house in the days that followed, feeling its familiar weight, the space I had built and nurtured over the years. It was mine again, and it wasn't about the walls or the furniture or the assets. It was about the principle. The legacy I had crafted with my own hands, not for one person to take, but for those who had earned it, who had remained loyal and true. And now they would benefit from it. The people who had stood by me, who had worked hard to help me build something that mattered, these were the ones who would receive what they deserved. I had made sure the right people would inherit, those who understood the value of hard work, loyalty, and integrity. Those who hadn't tried to manipulate me, who hadn't plotted behind my back. The true legacy of my life would go to them, not to someone who thought he could simply take what wasn't his. As I sat in my study one evening, the house quiet around me, I thought about my actions. The plan had taken years to develop. Every small gesture, every moment of patience had been carefully calculated. I hadn't rushed. I had let him believe he was in control, let him think he was winning. I had allowed him to dig his own grave, piece by piece, without ever raising a hand. I hadn't sought revenge in the way most would have, through shouting, through anger, through chaos. No, my revenge had been different. It had been quiet, dignified. It had been the patience of a man who had learned that sometimes the most powerful way to fight back is simply to wait, to watch, and to act with precision when the time is right. I had let my son's greed be his undoing, and in the end it was the only punishment he truly deserved. The finality of it all was peaceful, in a way. The satisfaction didn't come from seeing him lose, it came from knowing that I had stayed true to my values. I hadn't let my anger or my hurt cloud my judgment. I had remained calm, composed, and calculated throughout. The justice I delivered was clean, unclouded by bitterness or emotion. In the stillness of the room, I reflected on the truth that had guided me through this entire ordeal: patience and dignity always triumph. In the end, it wasn't the loudest or the most aggressive who won, but the one who stood firm, who understood that revenge didn't have to be messy or chaotic. Sometimes it was simply about doing what was right, regardless of the consequences. My legacy would remain intact, and so would my peace of mind. As I looked out the window, watching the sun set on another day, I knew I had done more than secure my inheritance. I had secured my peace. The world would turn, life would continue, but I had delivered a lesson that would echo for a long time. Greed destroys, but patience, dignity, and justice create a legacy that endures. And with that truth settled in my heart, I knew the battle was over. It was not a victory I needed to shout about. It was simply one that I had earned in silence, with wisdom, and in the quiet strength of knowing that true justice was always within my reach. It was, as they say, poetic justice. As I sit here, the weight of it all finally settling in, I realize there is no true triumph in victory. No cheers, no celebrations, just the quiet satisfaction that justice has been served. My son, lost in his greed, is left to live with the consequences of his own actions. And I'm left with a legacy that, though intact, feels different now. The tension, the struggle has all faded. What remains is a quiet peace. But what is the cost of such a victory? Revenge, while necessary, can be a hollow pursuit. The satisfaction comes not from the defeat of another, but from knowing that patience and dignity prevailed. The world has moved on, and so have I. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel.